Hey guys, welcome to a pretty informal video that I'm calling Brews and Cues, where I answer your questions. Specifically in this video, ones that me and Tana get asked a lot, or I know I do. I just wanted to answer some of the questions that I get asked the most to help you guys, and because it's obviously what you want to know. So I'm just going to dive right in. I'm filming on my phone. I hope this sounds okay. In typical Zelf style, Tana has my memory card right now. None of our other memory cards are working for some reason. There's nothing new there, right? So the first question I wanted to answer that we get asked a lot is how to deal with guilt after leaving Mormonism. So these questions usually are from people who have left Mormonism, don't believe it's true anymore or anything, but still have those feelings of guilt come up. I'm sure I've answered all of these questions in some variation before, but I'm just doing it in one place here for this video, for some new content. So feeling guilt after leaving a high demand religion is really normal, because even though you've logically come to the conclusion that this religion you're a part of for so long isn't true, your brain still has potentially decades of conditioning telling you otherwise. So while you may be able to logically know that there's nothing wrong with having a beer, your brain has made these associations, negative associations with the idea of drinking beer throughout your life repeatedly. And so those things are really quite deeply wired, and it does take time to unwire them, rewire them. So my advice in that situation is just to be patient with yourself and to observe it happening in yourself, and know that it won't be forever. And, you know, it might help to do some kind of affirmations or whatever, just to remind yourself, like, this is okay, I'm not doing anything wrong. You might need therapy, as a lot of people leaving high demand religions often do, because those feelings of guilt are so deeply entrenched and are so deep rooted in, you know, childhood trauma and all that fun stuff. But yeah, my main advice is just to observe it in yourself. Don't identify with it too fully. Know that it's just this residual thing from decades of conditioning, or however long you're in the church. And I think it will go away with time. Another question we get asked a lot, which I find really interesting because it usually comes from Mormons or ex-Mormons and people who have never been Mormon, is how to deal with missionaries, like how to say no to missionaries, which is kind of fascinating, like that people who have nothing to do with the church would message sort of a Mormon adjacent ex-Mormon YouTube channel and say, hey, how do I say no to missionaries? I hear a lot of stories from people who have like kind of just like got caught up with them, like they spoke to them one time and then now the missionaries are coming over again and they don't really know how to say no, and they sort of just got like pulled into the whole thing. So my advice here is very short and sweet, and it's, you just have to say no. And I think the issue here isn't finding some like cheat code for saying no in the best possible way. I mean, obviously you want to be polite, you want to be respectful, but it's really an issue of how good you are at setting boundaries. And a lot of us didn't grow up learning how to set boundaries well. So saying no can feel mean, even though it's perfectly valid to say no, especially, you know, to missionaries. You don't owe them anything. So I know that saying no is hard, especially if you grew up in a religion that kind of didn't let you say no to stuff like that. And this advice obviously applies to bishops or home teachers or your pushy Mormon parent or whatever it is, whoever it is. You just have to learn to state your boundaries really clearly, and as firmly as you need to for the situation. So, you know, if a missionary says, can we stop by and deliver a message, and you're not interested, you can say, no thank you, I'm not interested, but thank you. And then if you need to get firmer, you can. But yeah, I think it's just a thing with not being used to saying no. My advice would be to just keep at it with the practicing saying no, and hopefully it will become less painful over time and won't feel as brutal. So another question is how to deal with anger after leaving the church. And I was just talking to a friend of mine about this today, who feels a lot of anger about the views that their parents hold, specifically around, you know, issues of racism and things that often go hand in hand with Mormon belief. Again, first thing I think it's important to recognize is that anger is a perfectly normal feeling to feel when you're leaving a high demand religion. And Mormonism kind of does a lot of spiritual bypassing when it comes to anger. Like, anger isn't an emotion that's really honored or allowed even in Mormonism, which can make feelings of anger that come with leaving the church even more difficult to deal with because you've never been taught how to deal with them. But I think actually I was just listening to a video right before I started filming this from this girl who had gone on a retreat that's kind of like a trauma healing retreat where you do these sort of exercises that put you in your physical body more so that you learn to identify with what the feelings of trauma actually feel like in your physical body. And she was talking about how she had never really allowed herself to feel anger, but at this retreat she had learned that anger is just a sensation in the body like any other emotion, and zeroing in on what anger actually feels like, you know, whether it's the tight chest or the clenched stomach or, you know, whatever sort of sensations anger manifests as for you, just zeroing in on them, tuning into them, and recognizing that no emotion is wrong, and also all emotions are temporary, I think is really good. Also, I've heard that the best way to complete the stress response cycle is exercise, so maybe a little workout might be what you need if you're feeling anger. But again, it's another thing where I feel like time is a big healer, and this is like the most unflattering shirt to wear this video because it just kind of looks like I'm naked. Yeah, time. It's normal to feel angry when you leave a high demand religion, and you won't feel angry forever at people or the organization, is my experience, and I think the experience of a lot of people. Again, just recognizing that anger is a valid emotion and you feel it for a reason. And I think the important thing with anger is not to deny that you're feeling it or try and force yourself to not feel it, but to not be reactive to it. So, you know, it's fine to feel angry at your parents for, you know, saying something shitty or believing something shitty, but it's probably not going to help you to, you know, go in guns blazing to the family group text, like letting out all that anger. Like, you probably want to process it on your own before you can sort of productively release whatever was behind it, you know, whatever like thought was behind it that you might want to share or whatever it is. So yeah, anger, totally normal. Try to get in tune with your body and observe what it actually feels like as physical sensations when it's happening. Meditation, deep breathing is really good. If even like 5 deep breaths lowers your heart rate. And so that is obviously good for minimizing anger. So yeah, whatever stress relief you normally do, blah, 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 I'm rambling. How to tell your parents that you don't think the church is true. So this is one that me and Tana have talked about a bunch of times, but why not mention it again? Because I know we always have new viewers and stuff, and I guess the way we might answer that question will change over time as we change. Again, as with the setting boundaries, I think it's one of those things where it's not about finding the most perfectly eloquent way of saying it, or, you know, I know a lot of ex-Mormons will like write out a 50-page document and give it to their family members because that's kind of almost like what you feel you have to do to justify it when you're leaving Mormonism, because it's, you know, just so not okay. You feel like you need to come with like so many receipts, and then usually people don't even like get through it because, like, you know how people are with like confronting evidence that contradicts their beliefs, it's usually not appreciated. So yeah, I don't think it's about saying that you're leaving the church in the most perfect way, but I do think it's important to be respectful and civil and, you know, try to sort of not let your emotions be leading the conversation. Like, you want to feel in control. You don't want to feel like, you know, like you are going to have a lot of intense emotions, I imagine, telling Mormon family members that you're leaving their religion, like your tribe. But I think the less sort of like anger and resistance you can bring to the conversation, the better. And the less, like, don't try and convince them that they're wrong, or don't go in like guns blazing ready to be like fact. Like, maybe that'll come later down the line in certain settings, I don't know. But in my experience, it's just useless to do that when you're telling people why you think the church isn't true, or telling people that you're leaving the church, because it just puts them in full defense mode, panic mode, and I just don't think they're going to listen. So again, as with setting boundaries, I think it's just about very clearly saying what you need to say, which in that case was no, and in this case is like, hey, I'm leaving the church. You can obviously answer questions as they come up, or, you know, kind of gauge what it makes sense for you to say. Like, every situation is going to be different, but I wouldn't be too hard on yourself with how you say it. Like, it's not your job to go into that conversation trying to convince anyone of anything. Your only job is just to share your truth so that you can then move forward with your life and have, you know, the people you're telling integrate that new truth of yours into their lives. And maybe they won't want to integrate it, they won't accept it, and then there's nothing you can do about it. But yeah, all that matters is just that you get to say what your truth is. Like, you're leaving the church. It's kind of simple, you know, but also a nightmare, and I'm sorry for anyone who has to do that, because it's like a whole emotional weird thing. How to deal with a partner or friend who isn't Mormon anymore but still defends it / thinks it's a good institution. This is another thing that I think is just really common, is people leaving Mormonism and then not wanting to sort of speak or even think badly of it necessarily, even if they've sort of realized that it's not true and they need to leave it. There can be resistance to sort of acknowledging the full harm that the church might do, or that there can be that attachment to still thinking that it's still a really good and beautiful organization that does so much good for so many people. I don't agree with that personally. I think a lot of you probably don't either. I think in my experience, it's a phase a lot of people go through, because, you know, you're taught your whole life that ex-Mormons are these angry people who hate the church, blah, 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 and you don't want to be like that because you don't identify with that narrative that they paint of ex-Mormons as like sinful and lazy and all the other stuff that goes with it. So you don't want to be seen as like that narrative you've been raised with growing up. But like, it's okay to think the church is bad. It's also okay to think the church is good. Like, wherever you're at, it's fine. So in a situation where you have a partner or a friend who's still sort of defending Mormonism, I think, sorry about that siren if it's annoying. I think, you know, if you're able to sort of engage in a sort of healthy debate with them, then do it. But again, it's not your job to convince anyone that the church is bad if they don't think it is. Like, if they've left, then they're probably gonna like keep learning more and like opening their mind more, is my suspicion. So yeah, I'm a big fan of not trying to convince people of things, even though there are things I really want to be persuasive about and I really want to educate people on. People just shut down if they feel like you're like really needing them to be convinced by your argument. So you want to be able to try and maintain quite a calm, balanced persona if you can, with a lot of these issues that we're talking about, like talking to Mormons about stuff. What it's like living in Utah as an ex-Mormon. This one we always get. I don't know why this is so interesting. Short answer, it's great. I live in Salt Lake City. It doesn't feel like very Mormon, even though I drive past the temple every day. I never really feel, you know, like the grip of Mormonism around me. I see missionaries on Temple Square a lot, and it usually just makes me feel a little bit sad or sorry for them. That's about it. It doesn't, I mean, it's annoying that you can't buy wine at the grocery store, the stuff like that, you know, little annoying stuff. And the politics are really annoying, and obviously those are influenced by Mormonism. But Salt Lake City has a really great sort of counterculture to Mormonism. So yeah, it's not really a big deal. It doesn't feel necessarily like I'm living in a super Mormon area. But I work kind of closer to Utah County, and I notice if I go to like a place for lunch, I'm like sort of surprised by how Mormon everyone is, because I don't see it in Salt Lake City. So I'll go to like a lunch place in South Jordan and I'll be like, wow, everyone in here is wearing knee-length shorts. Like, you see all the like normal, like stereotypical Mormon mums in their little Mormon outfits that you've seen like 10,000 times before. And that's always kind of interesting, like remembering, oh yeah, there's tons of Mormons in the state I live in, and like seeing garments and stuff. But yeah, not a big deal for me personally. I'm sure it's different for people who live in Utah County and all that stuff. Like, a lot of our messages do come from those people, and I feel for you, because that is tough. And I often advise people to get out if they can, but that's not the right path for everyone, so don't listen to me. I think I'm going to leave this Q&A here for today, but if you have any more questions, I'm in quarantine, so you can ask me as many as you want and I can make more videos. You could also ask questions for Tanner. He's available to film too. So thank you for tuning in. I hope that you're all doing well and staying safe. I hope everyone in your, you know, inner circle in life is healthy, and outer circle, and that you're not getting too bogged down by everything going on. I'd love to make some more videos right now, just because I've been watching a ton of YouTube because of quarantine, so I imagine a lot of other people are too. So let me know if you have any ideas for what I could realistically film in my apartment, and thanks for watching. If you want to support our channel, you can do so on Patreon. We also have a PayPal and Amazon wishlist, all that good stuff. Thanks for being here.